Most people think a credit score is just for borrowing money. That idea is already too small for the world we live in now. We are drifting into something bigger, a credit score society. In this kind of system, one number does not just price your debt. It starts shaping your access, your options, and your treatment. That does not mean the score controls everything, but it can quietly influence far more than most people realize. The Federal Trade Commission says your credit matters because it can affect loans, housing, insurance, jobs, and more. That alone tells you the score now reaches well past the loan office. And once one number starts traveling across that many decisions, it stops feeling like finance alone. It starts feeling like status infrastructure. That is the real topic here. Not just credit scores, but the society built around them. This video is not about telling people to worship the number. It is about seeing what the number actually does. Because people often hear, build your credit, like it is harmless adult advice. But what sounds simple becomes very different when a score starts acting like a filter on normal life. It can decide whether ordinary steps feel smooth, expensive, or humiliating. A score is supposed to estimate how likely you are to repay a loan on time. Fair enough. The FTC explains that most credit scores usually range from 300 to 850. The basic business logic is easy to understand. Lenders want a fast shorthand for risk. On the useful side, that shorthand can make borrowing faster and more scalable. In theory, it can reduce some human bias too. So to be fair, the score system is not purely evil. It does solve a real problem. Without some common measure, lending would often be slower, more subjective, and in some cases more arbitrary. So yes, credit scoring solves a real coordination problem in mass finance. That is the good side. The bad side begins when one rough shortcut starts getting used as a character test. You missed a payment, carried too much balance, or just started late, and suddenly the number follows you into multiple rooms. This is where the system gets interesting and a little absurd. A tool designed for debt decisions starts bleeding into decisions about dignity, convenience, and cost. That is when a finance metric starts behaving like social architecture. Want a mortgage? Your score can affect whether you qualify and what rate you pay. The CFPB is very direct about this. Your credit score can affect your ability to get a mortgage and the mortgage rate you pay. That means the same home can cost two people very different amounts over time. One gets a cheaper future, the other pays extra for years. And this is one of the key themes of the channel. Money changes treatment, but systems also change the price of the same life. Same house, different future bill. Move beyond mortgages, and the reach gets wider. Landlords and tenant screening systems may look at credit reports when deciding whether to rent to you. The CFPB even tells renters to request a tenant screening report if they are denied housing. So the score society does not begin only when you want to buy a house. It can show up when you just want a place to live. Then there is insurance. A lot of people do not realize their credit can influence what they pay there too. The FTC says your credit can affect insurance decisions. That means a weaker score can make risk protection more expensive, which is a rough joke if your finances are already fragile. The people who need margin most often get less of it. Some utilities may also care. The FTC notes your credit history can affect getting utility services. Even basic infrastructure can ask for trust signals. So the score can touch the boring but essential parts of life too. Lights on, water on, life moving. And then there is employment. The FTC says your credit can affect jobs too. Not every job, not every employer, but enough to matter. This is where the system starts feeling especially strange. You may need income to improve the score, but the score can affect access to some income opportunities in the first place. That is not a clean meritocracy. That is a feedback loop. And feedback loops are where class systems become sticky. The score society is not just about punishment. It is about compounding. A strong score can lower borrowing costs, make approval easier, and reduce friction. It can make the whole financial world feel cleaner and more polite. A weak score can raise costs, shrink options, and increase scrutiny. That means the score does not just describe your situation. Over time, it can help shape it by changing what your life costs. This is why people with good credit often say the system feels invisible. It works, so they stop noticing it. People with bad or thin credit notice it constantly. Every application starts feeling like a small test. That difference matters. Smooth systems feel natural. Friction-heavy systems feel personal, even when they are automated. Now let's talk about how the score gets built. The score is not magic. It is built from patterns in your credit report. Payment history matters. Carrying balances matters. Available credit versus used credit matters. New accounts can matter. None of this is mystical. It is pattern tracking. And none of that is insane on its own. The problem is what happens around the edges. For example, if your budget is tight, you may carry higher balances more often. That can push utilization up, which can hurt the score. If your score falls, future credit may get more expensive. If future credit gets more expensive, staying current gets harder. That is how a financial problem turns into a scoring problem, and then a scoring problem turns back into a financial problem. This is why bad months can echo forward longer than people expect. Once again, feedback loop. And then there is the thin file problem. Some people are not bad at credit. They are just new, invisible, or underdocumented by the system. They may be responsible, but not legible. But invisibility does not always feel neutral. In practice, it can feel like suspicion. No or limited credit can mean deposits, denials, or worse pricing because the system has less to measure. So being invisible can still be expensive. This is one of the oddest parts of the score society. It can treat not enough data like not enough trust. And that can hit young adults hard right when they are trying to start normal adult life. There is also the identity side of all this. People start seeing the score not just as a financial metric, but as a personal grade. That is psychologically dangerous. A risk number is not a moral ranking. Yet the culture around credit often pushes exactly that feeling. Good. Credit starts sounding like good person behavior. Bad. Credit starts sounding like irresponsibility, laziness, or failure, even when life shocks played a big role. The culture often forgets that fragile budgets produce fragile score patterns. That is why the conversation needs more honesty. Scores reflect patterns, but patterns live inside real lives. Data is never floating above reality. A medical event, divorce, layoff, caregiving burden, or plain bad timing can do real damage. And the damage may outlast the event itself. Meanwhile, stronger households usually have more room to protect the score. They can survive mistakes that would seriously hurt a thinner budget household. They can autopay more easily, keep lower utilization, and absorb emergencies without missing payments. So again, the score is not just a neutral mirror. It also reflects unequal buffers. That is why this topic fits the channel so well. We are looking at a hierarchy that feels technical on the surface, but social underneath. The Score Society says, your file travels before you do. Before you walk into the apartment, the mortgage office, the insurer, or the utility setup, the file may already be whispering. Sometimes that whisper says, easy customer. That usually means cheaper, faster, smoother treatment. Sometimes it says, higher risk, charge more, check harder. That whisper can be profitable for companies because scoring helps price people efficiently. The more precisely a firm can sort people, the more precisely it can monetize them. And from a narrow business perspective, that is rational. But a rational pricing system can still produce socially ugly results. This is where the Score Society starts resembling a quiet caste system for the financially documented, soft, polite, data-driven, and still deeply unequal in effect. Not a total caste system, obviously. People can move, scores can change. But movement takes time, consistency, and usually some breathing room. And breathing room is exactly what many struggling households lack. That is why the just build your credit advice can sound a little insulting. It skips the gap between knowing the rules and having enough stability to follow them. It is not wrong. It is just too incomplete. Useful advice has to admit the structure, not just the behavior. People need both strategy and honesty about the game they are playing. So what should people actually do? Start with the boring but important move. Know what is in your reports. The FTC says you should check your reports, especially before applying for a loan, insurance, housing, or a job. And requesting your own reports does not hurt your score. The CFPB is clear about that, so checking is caution, not self-sabotage. If something is wrong, dispute it. Errors should not get to define your price of living. Second, protect payment history as much as you realistically can. If you cannot be perfect, at least try to avoid the avoidable damage. If autopay helps, use it carefully. If reminders help, use them aggressively. The goal is not elegance. The goal is fewer avoidable misses. Third, watch revolving balances. High utilization can drag the score faster than people expect, even if you are technically still current. That does not mean never use credit. It means do not normalize living pinned near the limit. High pressure should not become your default setting. Fourth, be strategic before major applications. The CFPB notes that opening many new accounts in a short time can hurt your score. If a mortgage or big loan is coming, do not create extra noise right before it. Fifth, if you are thin file or rebuilding, use tools that create positive history instead of just hoping time fixes it. Passive waiting is usually weaker than deliberate rebuilding. A secured card, a credit builder product, or a small account managed carefully can be more useful than vague optimism. Sixth, do not turn the score into your identity. Use it as a tool, not a mirror for your self-worth. This matters because shame makes people hide from the system, and hiding makes mistakes harder to catch. Finally, remember the larger lesson. Good credit is powerful because the system gives it power. That means improving your score can be smart, but it does not mean the system is fair just because you learn to navigate it. Skill is not the same thing as justice. You can play the game better and still admit the game is bigger than personal virtue. And that is the adult way to think about this. Not panic, not worship, just clarity. The final truth is simple. A credit score began as a lending shortcut, but in modern life it behaves more like social leverage. It can open doors, lower prices, and smooth daily life for some people. For those households, the system starts to feel almost invisible. It can raise costs, tighten scrutiny, and shrink options for others. That is the new credit score society. Once you see how far the number travels, you stop treating it like a tiny finance detail and start treating it like a quiet piece of class infrastructure built into everyday life.